Member for Calgary Nose Hill. I had different information on my screen here.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. That was actually because I was slightly delayed getting here, and one of my colleagues was about to jump in the fray, and I thank him for that. Okay, so feminism. And the reason why this is material to this bill is because I've had colleagues in the Liberal Party have stood up and talked about the Prime Minister's feminist bona fides. I've had colleagues within my party talk about whether this bill is actually feminist, and colleagues from the NDP raise the same questions. And I want to have a bit more of an honest conversation today. So yesterday in the House of Commons, or 2 days ago, I believe, the Status of Women's Minister was asked a question by one of her colleagues in the Liberal backbench to talk about feminism and different slurs that were used, I guess. She stood up and made a reference to two things that have made the news recently, calling parliamentary colleagues Barbies. I've had the great pleasure of being called that before. In fact, an artist in Manitoba, who I understood actually had grants, I'm not sure at the time, from the Manitoba Arts Council, put together a movie that insinuated that I was talking point Barbie. So I felt sympathy for that. And then also talked about a very derogatory term, feminazi, being used. The problem that I had with the Status of Minister's response was that she got up and she made a very glib comment that somehow I think was designed to absolve her party of guilt in this particular aspect. And to me, rather than being honest about the fact that none of us, to put it politely, are perfect in this regard, no party is fantastic about this, as the Status of Women's Minister herself stood up very proudly, very glibly, ignored this key fact. I raised the comments made by one of her current colleagues. I could have raised the fact, if I had had more time to find the quote, that I believe that one of her colleagues alluded to or may have suggested or insinuated that one of my colleagues was akin to a stripper. There are members of my colleagues opposite who are now sitting on the independent benches for various reasons. So we're all uncomfortable here now, and we should be. Because when we talk about being feminists and we talk about standing up for women's rights, we can't pay lip service, we can't make it a partisan issue. And that's what we do here over and over and over again. So I'm not going to stand here and pretend that my party has been perfect, and I'm not also just going to wave the stick at the Liberal Party. I'm going to ask all members in this House to do a lot better. So when it comes to this bill, if my colleagues in the Liberal Party really support women's rights, they are going to go to the Prime Minister and say, you know what, maybe it's not right that we're passing a bill that calls female ministers equal when they do not have the ability to bring memorandums to Cabinet. For my colleagues in the Liberal backbench who don't understand what that means that there are people in their quote-unquote gender parity Cabinet that are called full Cabinet members and included in the count of their quota who do not have the right to bring a topic to Cabinet for consideration without the approval of a senior and, in most cases, male minister. They also don't have the right to chair Cabinet committees. In fact, when you look at the chairmanship and the composition of the Prime Minister's Cabinet committees, and that's where the real power happens in government, Mr. Speaker, you know that, all of us in this place know that, it's actually a lie and an affront that there is gender parity in that Cabinet. So if we're going to be uncomfortable, let's talk about that fact. And rather than enshrining that in law and having people stand up here and extol the virtues of this, let's call a spade a spade. This bill does not create a gender parity Cabinet. What it does is it makes women in that Cabinet have to stand up and talk about the fact that they're equal even when they're not because of the Prime Minister's ego. And that is the antithesis of feminism. That's making women stand up and cover over inequality for a political gain of a man. And I don't care what